Chapter 3, 66. From speech and meaning, the Buddha proceeds to consciousness and knowledge, on which the foregoing pair is based. It is the transformation of consciousness that constitutes knowledge, but there is no knowledge outside consciousness. Section 67. In the previous section, the Buddha indicated that the culmination of knowledge consisted in an understanding that nothing arises and nothing ceases. But such an understanding is not possible if someone believes something changes. Hence, the Buddha considers this subject in order to lead his audience from consciousness and projection to knowledge and non-projection. Section 68. The reason people believe something changes is because of their attachment to the projection that something exists or does not exist. But because their underlying projections are flawed, because they don't realize they are nothing but the perceptions of their own mind, they struggle to get free in vain. The Buddha likened such people to silkworms wrapping themselves in cocoons of delusion. Section 69. Previously, the Buddha said things have no self-existence. But if nothing has self-existence, is this not the same as nihilism? At the same time, the Buddha's teaching of personal realization would seem to be advocating self-existence. Is this not a contradiction? Thus, Mahamate wonders if the Buddha's teaching does not involve attachment to views of existence and non-existence. The Buddha reminds him that all teachings are expedient means, nothing more, and points him back to personal realization. This section is also noteworthy for the great variation among texts, as Suzuki himself noted. As elsewhere, I've followed Gunabhadra. Section 70. The Buddha continues to develop the point with which he closed the previous section. Talking about what is real burns the mouth. To say anything at all is to ask for trouble. Fortunately, the Buddha has a mouth made of asbestos. In this case, he uses one of his own teachings as an example, quote, "Whatever exists does not arise," close quote. Like any teaching of the Buddha, it was not meant as a proposition, but as an expedient means to help those attached to existence or non-existence. Also, it only works if it is applied to everything, including the proposition itself. Section 71. If opening one's mouth only leads to trouble, what about one's eyes and ears? How do we obtain knowledge? And what are the obstacles? Mahamate still thinks of knowledge as something we obtain from an external world, and still does not grasp that whatever we might know is a perception of our own mind. It turns out, no knowledge is knowledge. Who would have guessed? Section 72. The reason Mahamate is still attached to external existence is because he has not yet experienced the personal realization of the knowledge of a Buddha. Hence, the Buddha repeats his earlier mention of the way of attainment, which Suzuki translates self-realization, and the way of instruction, which he dealt with earlier in section 63. The way of instruction is for external knowledge, and the way of attainment is for knowledge that is neither external nor internal. Section 73. Mahamate wonders if the way of instruction does not include other philosophies, such as materialism. But not only do materialists confuse ordinary people, they also use their way of instruction to confuse the gods. The Buddha redirects Mahamate to the way of attainment, which he also calls the way of personal understanding, which, ironically, is too empirical for materialists, as it alone is based on one's own experience. Section 74. The previous section talked about the cause of the world according to materialists. This section talks about liberation from the world, or nirvana. Nirvana was seen by Hinayana Buddhists as the final and complete annihilation of both body and mind, while Mahayana Buddhists see it as the final and complete transformation of the bifurcating and bifurcated mind. In addition to Buddhism, other paths had their own views of this form of ultimate liberation. and in this section the Buddha lists more than 20 of them. Section 75. In the previous section, the Buddha moves away from the traditional view of nirvana as the end of something to the later view that it is marked by the presence of something, namely enlightenment. Hence, Mahamate asks about enlightenment. But in defining enlightenment, the Buddha avoids any of the major dualities. It is neither different nor not different from the skandhas, from liberation, or from wisdom.